Welcome back to the Meeple Marathon. Today we're going to talk about how to set up and play Massive Darkness 2. Now, I have gone ahead and set up the game for the tutorial mission, which is a very simple, very straightforward mission, but it helps you learn the mechanics of the game. I recommend you trying this out with at least one character if you have never played Massive Darkness before. If you've played Zombicide before or some of the other CMON games, you might be able to pick up on things and jump right into the first mission, but otherwise this is nice just to run through it. If nothing else, I've been running through them with each of the individual classes in order to make sure I understand how those classes work. But for setup, the actual board here, you're going to look to the setup guide in the mission booklet, which is at the end of the rule book. There are a few things, however, that I want to point out that I've seen common mistakes or people having to ask questions about, and a lot of them stem around the monster spawn zones, or initial monster spawn, starting spawn monsters, starting mob spawn zones versus a mob spawn token versus a portal. So what you're seeing right now is a monster spawn token. This is only here to remind you that when you open up either one of these doors, you're going to spawn a mob right here. It's part of the, room or corridor reveal action. So anytime you have to open up a new door, like right now in this tutorial, we can basically go along this corridor here and then out across the bridge. All of this stuff is closed off to us. This is closed off to us. You can see that there's kind of walls here, but not very many places you can go. When you open this door, you're going to be revealing a spawn token there. We're going to talk about that revealing a room in more detail in a little bit. Then there are monster portals, which I have the 3D landscape version of, but if you don't have the 3D landscape, your portal is going to look like this. The purple one is for roaming monsters specifically. Sometimes this is the only one that's going to be on the board because both roaming monsters and mobs can spawn from this. If you're told to put green ones out, it means that only mobs are ever going to spawn from that part. Lastly, and again, this is the tutorial mission, so you're not going to see this, so I'm going to show you just graphically what the first mission setup looks like, just for example's sake. This image right here, which is the same as this, but it is clearly not the token. See here you can see the token, and here you can see this is where you would spawn during setup a mob. Here you would spawn during setup a mob. Here you can see this is where a portal would be placed, and if you're playing with 5+ players, you place a portal here, and 3+ players, you're going to place a portal here. So they're very distinct differences. Personally, I wish they would have picked like different symbology to make it much more clear. But the white with no background or anything is where you spawn mobs only during setup. The portals is where you will spawn mobs when you reach certain spots on the darkness phase. And then last but not least, these tokens are only when you enter a room. So you can see in this case here, the heroes are going to start up here and have to trek down here, and so nothing would happen here until they enter this door, and nothing would happen with these two until they enter this door. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. This is where the path goes. I sent them right over here. I was like, what's up with that? And this one would only spawn once they come in this or this door. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about what else you need to set up. So you're going to look to set up the actual map based on the scenario specific mission setup. You're going to want to separate all your cards out. This is probably the most tedious part of the game, is setting up stacks for common treasures, rare treasures, epic treasures, door cards, various levels of mob cards. I have all my roaming monsters stacked up there, and various levels of mob item cards. All of these decks need to be shuffled up and set somewhere where you can grab from them pretty quickly. In the tutorial mission, you're probably not going to need anything past level 1, 2s, and probably not any epics. But for the rest of the scenarios, hopefully you'll need them all. All right, so you've shuffled up all of your cards. You want to have your tokens handy, especially your health and mana tokens. Those are going to be used quite frequently. You're also going to want to have your treasure tokens somewhat handy. In your initial treasure bag, you're going to want to put all of the common, which this is actually in there from previous game, and 5 rares. So that's these blue ones. Don't put any epics in, so all the commons, 5 rares, and then shake them up and set it off to the side. All right. For your particular hero, you're going to want to get a hero board. They're all the same. You're going to want to pick a color and add in some pegs. You can add the color base if you so choose to your hero. And you're going to put your hero card right here in the middle. Then, from the starting equipment deck, each hero gets to choose one consumable. It's either mana potion or health potion. I have mine right here just to save a little space because I don't have a trinket yet. Normally, your consumables sit off to the side here, but for right now, I just stuck it there. Then each character gets to pick a weapon. So you get to choose. I am playing with a ranger in this case, so I picked one that does have a ranged icon, or can be used for range. It can be used for both. And then everybody gets a batted leather armor. Now, if you are playing with 5 to 6 heroes, you're going to flip it to this side, which just simply gives you a reroll, probably because there's a lot more lot more miniatures in a mob when you're playing with that many people, so I guess they're making it a little easier for you. I don't know. And then you're going to take one of these level boards here. They are, same on both sides, but if you're going to play the campaign, you're going to put a different one in, which is different on both sides. Put your pegs at zeros, and you start at level 1. You're also going to go ahead and put down the number of tokens you have based on your health and mana. So you're going to start with 5 health, and you're going to start with 3 mana. As you spend mana, you'll put them back in the supply. As you lose health, you'll put them back in the supply. The opposite is for the mobs and the enemies. You will actually place the health markers on the enemies. But for the purposes of heroes, because the Berserker works the way the Berserker does, you need to start with them out and take them away. And we'll talk about how the Berserker works in a different video. Last thing is you're going to pick a skill card. These are, mostly look like this on the back. I'm a ranger. This is a skill card. And you can see that it's a level 1 card there. So I am at level 1, so I can choose this one. Here's my stack of future skill cards I can choose from, and you can see here's a level 5. So I cannot even claim this card until I've reached level 5. So your starting skill has to be a level 1 skill. Last but not least, you want to get your darkness tracker out. This is what you're going to move during the darkness phase, and just put this little token on the 1 space. Other than that, you are pretty much set up for the game. Depending on how much space you have, you may go ahead and set up all the mob miniatures. Again, if you're playing one or two characters, you only need 2 mob figurines plus the leader. So that might not be so bad. If you're playing with 6, though, you're going to need every single miniature in the box. But at this point, we have set up for the game. You do want to make sure you pull out whatever items are necessary for your particular class. For the Ranger class, it is only this deck of arrow cards. For other classes, there might be a second board that you need to find space for. The Wizard's got the little rondelle thing. So yeah, keep that in mind, that you will want to make sure you have your class specific items. For the Ranger, it's quite easy setup. All right, so with all of it set up, let's talk about the different phases of the game. Okay, so there are 4 phases of the game, and each round you're going to need to go through all 4. Those phases are the hero phase, enemy phase, level up phase, and then the darkness phase. So congratulations, you as the hero always get to start the round. On your hero phase, you essentially have 3 actions normally that you can take. If you're playing true solo where there's only one character on the board, you actually get 4 actions. That's how they kind of mitigate you being by yourself, is you get to take 4 actions, but you still are going to spawn mobs and such based on a 2-player count. So you would spawn a leader and 2 mobs, 2 minions. We'll talk about that in a minute. On your turn, as part of your actions, there are several things you can do. You can move, take a movement action, which we'll cover in more detail in just a second. You can take an attack action, which, this is a dungeon. This is a classic dice chucking dungeon crawler, so there's going to be a lot of attack actions. You can take a trade or equip action. This is one you're not going to take, very common. If you end up with equipment that you don't want or need or can't fit into your current kit, you keep them over here kind of in a backpack area, similar to where you would keep your consumables. At any point in time, you can spend an action to pull stuff out of your backpack, rearrange your board, or if you're sharing sharing a space with another character, you can swap items or give them items, things like that. And then you can take the recover action, which is resting. If you take the resting action, you basically recover or gain back up to 2 mana or 2 health, or a combination of 1 and 1. And then last but not least, you can take a special action. My particular character, or none of my cards here have the word action on them, but if you see the word action written on any cards in front of you, you could take that action as one of your 3 to 4 actions on your turn. So let's talk in more detail about movement. Movement is covers a lot more than just moving your miniature. When you say I'm going to take the movement action, you gain what they call MP, or movement points. I'm not a super big fan of that term because you can do so much with your movement points. It really doesn't seem to do it justice. But movement points can be spent to move to an adjacent zone. There is no moving diagonally, all right? But you could spend 2 movement points to go 1, 2 down this corridor here. You can also spend a movement point to open a door. So if I start in this location and I want to move into this room, 1 movement action gets me into this space and then opens the door. At this point, we would do a door reveal kind of mini phase. We're going to cover that here in just a second. But at this point, with just 1 move action, I've only gotten here and opened the door. If that was my last action, if I'm out of actions, I'm just standing here just outside the room. The other things you can do with movement points is to pick up treasure. So once we reveal a room, these tokens would be replaced with treasure tokens. Or you can interact with objective tokens, basically interact with objects. So you can move with a movement point. You can open doors with a movement point, and you can interact with objects with a movement point. So your movement action covers a lot of bases, those MPs as they like to call them. I don't know what a better term would be, but just remember that MP does not necessarily mean only movement. All right, now let's discuss revealing a room. So we have spent our movement action. We have opened up this door as one of our movement points. At this point, we have to reveal the room. So there's 3 steps to that. The first one is draw and execute a door card. So here are the door cards. You're going to shuffle these up at the beginning of the game. You're going to flip it over, and this one says Repair Room. The active hero may keep this card until the end of the quest and discard it when defending to gain +1 defense die. Well, that's nice. That's actually a benefit. And so I would want to put this over here kind of in my backpack so I remember to use it. Room cards or door cards sometimes can be positive, sometimes they can be negative. It really is kind of a crapshoot. But we have resolved our door card. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to spawn our monsters. So you're going to remove this token and you're going to draw a mob card based on the dungeon level. You know the dungeon level based on your level. Now, if you're solo, you just pay attention to yours. But if you're playing with multiple characters, whoever is highest, that's the level. If you're familiar with Zombicide, it's similar to the threat level of the highest player. So We're at 1, so we're going to draw from the 1 to 2. And we've got some demons here, so we'll set this off to the side. At this point, we have to do a few things while spawning the demons. First of all, you're going to get the demon leader and 2 demon minions, place them into the room. These guys take up, there's a lot of winged creatures in this game, and they take up a lot of space. So we have placed our miniatures. Next, we're going to look here to this card, and we're going to see it gets 1 treasure token. So we're going to go to our treasure bag here. We're going to shuffle out, and we're going to pull out 1 token. It's a common treasure, so we can stick that right there. Last but not least, for the mob, we need to give them an item. The leader gets a weapon, and so mob items, level 1 to 2, color matches. You're going to flip this over. All of this does not matter. The only thing that matters here is this symbol and die color on the bottom. You can even cover up the words, because the only thing they care about is that they have a magical weapon, which means they have range, and they're rolling 2 yellow dice on their attack. All right, so this is kind of what the mob, who attack and defend and move around as a group, this is what they have and what you're dealing with. This is the treasure you're going to get when you defeat them. This is the defense dice they're going to roll. We'll talk about all this in more detail in a second. The last thing you're going to do is spawn treasure that may be in this particular room. So you see this is a treasure token. You're going to discard that, and you're going to draw a treasure token from the bag. Now remember, we put a couple rares in there. It could have been a rare. You could have gotten lucky. As you increase your player count, you're going to put more tokens, more of these type of tokens in the room to begin with, and you're going to draw a treasure token to replace each one of these. The reason you don't do that at setup is because the composition of your treasure bag is going to get better as you level up. And so as you reveal rooms further down, you want to be able to be drawing from, have better chances of getting like the rares and the epics. At this point, though, you have revealed the room. If you have movement points left over or an action left over, you could move into the room, you could pick this up, so on and so forth. But at this point, we have revealed the room. All right, let's talk about the attack action now. This is an action that you have to spend one of your AP action points on. And when you do so, you have to create a dice pool. And there's a lot of things you have to take into account as part of your dice pool. The main thing is your weapons. So you can see here my ranger actually has kind of a dual type of weapon. It takes up 2 hands though, so she doesn't have anything else she could use. And since I'm 1 space away, I have to use the ranged icon. Now, no matter which spot I would be in, I'm still just getting 1 yellow die to attack with. Not very good, but that's why it's a starting weapon. If you had, say, 2 ranged weapons that were somehow, like she's got 2 hand crossbows, say she finds 2 hand crossbows, so they both have that ranged icon, you could pick up the dice for both. Say maybe you would add another one. Or if you had 2 melee weapons, you could add up the dice for both. Maybe one of them's orange and one of them's yellow. But for right now, she's only taking a ranged action, so she gets 1 yellow die. Now, the mob gets their defense dice, which you can see is 1 blue die for the entire mob. All right? And then last but not least, you have to add in a number of monster dice based upon the number of minions. Not the number of miniatures, but the number of minions. So in this case, just 2. That means that not only does the mob get to defend, but they get to strike back, possibly. And you, at the beginning of the game, are only fighting with this itty-bitty little teeny thing. So, at this point, we have created our dice pool. We're going to take these dice, and we're going to roll them up. All right. So, we've got a lot of stuff to deal with. What you see here, and let's put these up here so you can see them better. You can resolve your dice in any order, and that means you could resolve some and then possibly gain something, re-roll more. But as soon as you have resolved the die, it is locked. All right? So let's work through these one at a time. These two symbols here mean we look at the card here, and this mob, when that symbol is rolled, attacking or defending, the hero has to discard one. So no matter whether they roll that via attacking or defending, they're really just stealing your mana. So I rolled 2 of them. I would have to discard 2 mana. All right, so those have been resolved. We can't re-roll them at this point. Next, we look at our card here, and the mana symbol means we gain 1 mana back. Now, it's important that I did this first because I have a limit of 3 mana. If I had taken my mana first, I would have been at my limit and would not have been able to take it. But since I resolved these first, I now have room to gain a mana back. So this die technically has partially been resolved. At this point, it would be locked. The last thing you're going to do is compare swords versus shields. In this case, the mob as an entire group is defending 1 shot, and I've only hit them for 1 hit. So they're actually defending it. But at this point, I can also look to my skills, and you can see here my arrow volley level 1 for a ranged attack. If I spend 1 mana, each other enemy in line of sight takes 1 wound. When you are attacking, you have to attack the minions first. So at this point, they all were full health. It really doesn't matter. I was aiming at one of these 2. But each other enemy, even though I didn't hit the one I was aiming at, each other enemy is going to gain a token. Once any of these enemies get to 3 hearts, they're going to be removed from the board. I cannot target the leader miniature, but the leader miniature is still an enemy, so in this case it still is affected. For that is 1 attack action. Again, you're pretty weak early on with just your starting equipment. But let's say further on down the road, we are able to take out this first minion. What we're going to do at that point is gain 1 experience point, so we're going to tick this up on the board. There we go. And now let's say further on down the road, we have successfully taken out both minions and the leader, so we have defeated the mob entirely. And somehow we did it without losing any health. At this point, once you have defeated the mob, even if you are in a different zone doing a ranged attack, you're going to gain the treasure. So in this case, you would return that, or no, you return this back to the bag, I think. Yeah. You put this back in the bag, and you would draw a card from the common treasure stack. If it was a rare treasure token, you'd take the blue cards. But for now, we have this. So this is a consumable. Remember, our consumables are supposed to be over here in our backpack area. We would just gain it. If, however, let me see if I can find one here. It was a weapon, you would have to make a decision at this point. You could either immediately equip this, but then we'd have to put our short bow in our backpack because this is one-handed and this is two-handed. Or if, we already had a single-handed weapon, like a short sword, we could just add it. And this would be an example of if I did a melee attack, I could roll 2 yellow dice. All right. Let me get my starting equipment back here. If you roll, say, helmet or, head armor, you would put it there. If you roll a trinket, you would put it there. You get to immediately equip it. You don't need to take a separate trade equip action to put the stuff onto your player board. So if you gain a item, you get to immediately take a kind of equip action, not a trade action. You also, at this point, we're going to gain, you would have gained 1 more point for defeating that other minion and 5 points for the leader. All right, and so this card has now been dealt with. It would, go into a discard pile. I'm just going to stick it right there. The last thing is this mob item that they were using as a weapon. They dropped it, obviously. You get this item. So again, here I would have to make a decision. Both of these are two-handed weapons. I'd have to get rid of something. Probably getting rid of my starting equipment. But again, and this would have to go in the two-handed slot there. So not only do you gain treasure if you're the last one to defeat the mob, you also gain their item. So it is a little bit of a benefit if you put the killing blow on. Obviously somebody could come in and take out 3 out of the 4 miniatures and you just come in and take out the leader. You're going to get a lot of benefit. That's why there's a trade action in the game. All right, but at that point, you have essentially taken out the mob. All right, I'm going to place these guys here just for the instances of our next phase. But other than that, we've talked enough, I think, about the trade and equip action. Special actions on cards is self-explanatory. Rest action we've covered. So we've covered all of the actions that you could take as a hero. At this point, this is an activation token. If you're playing with multiple people, you would flip this over. You've taken your turn. When you're playing with multiple characters, you can decide who takes their turn in what order, but that hero has to complete their actions before another hero can go. But everybody gets to go before the enemies go, and you get to choose the order that they go. So after the hero phase, we have the enemy phase. For the enemy phase, you're going to activate each enemy on the board, each set of enemy for a mob, or each individual roaming monster. Let's pull one out here. This would be a roaming monster here. And you get to choose in which order you activate them. If it's a mob, their stuff is pretty simple. They get 2 actions. If they can attack you based on the weapon they have or their location, they will. And if they're in their same location as you and they can, they'll attack you twice. Otherwise, they're just going to move towards the closest hero. So in this case, they would just move here, and as their second action, they would move here. Okay? But if they were, say, back here where they started, and they had a melee weapon, they would take their first action to move into the zone, and then their second action to attack. Now let's come back here to our mob card again and just look at the card here. So remember, we're only looking at the bottom. We're only looking at the number of dice. All right. So they roll that plus a die for each minion, sorry. And then you, with your battered leather armor, are going to get 1 defense die. These are all going to get rolled up. And at this point, if you can do any rerolls, you would do it. But then we need to address these symbols here. So you whiffed on your defense. So that really doesn't do anything. They whiffed on their defense. Now, these are instant swipes. Cannot be defended by the minions. All right, so that one's been resolved. Then here we look back here. Oh, I have to discard a mana, so we would get rid of that. That one's been resolved. Enemies do not care about mana. So none of the standard enemies, at least that I've found, they would just ignore the mana symbol. All they care about is the 1 sword. If I had had a shield at this point, I would be blocking it, but I didn't. So again, I would have to take another wound. At this point, their attack action has been resolved. Remember, they had to move into my zone, so they're done now. As for the roaming monster here, let me find his specific card. All right, so here's the card for the ghoul. And what you do in this case is you start at the top of their card, and for the first bullet point that you can accomplish, that the first bolded text is true, you do that action and then they're done. All right, so in this case, if there is a minion in the ghoul's zone, there is not. That is false. Otherwise, the ghoul moves 3 zones toward the closest hero and attacks them if possible. He's melee, so he's got to be in the same zone, so he would go 1, 2, 3. That's it. If, however, for some reason, this was like this, if there is a minion in the ghoul zone, kill 1 minion in that zone, player's choice. Kazaa! And the ghoul heals 5, so it's eating up the minions. But basically, that's how you activate a roaming monster. You just start at the top of their card and read down until you find a statement that is true, and you complete that statement. All right? Once all of the enemies, mobs, and roaming monsters have activated, then you have finished the enemy phase. The third phase is the level up phase. So interesting to note, the level up phase always comes after the enemy phase, because if you level up, you're going to gain some health and mana. So that might be the difference between being knocked out and staying on your feet. So at this point, I have accumulated more than 5 XP. You can see here on the level board, 5 XP is the cost to get to level 2. When I level up, I'm going to increase my max HP by 1, and I'm going to add 1 rare treasure token to the treasure bag. So I would spend my 5 like so. I would move my peg down. I'm going to gain 1 health, but also my maximum health now is 6. So you get 1 heart, plus you raise your maximum. And then I would take 1 rare treasure token and add it to the composition of the bag. All right. I have leveled up. If multiple people level up, everybody gets to level up. Leveling up is not a choice. It is a requirement if you have the amount of XP to spend. That way you can't run around, accumulate, 59 XP without increasing the dungeon level, and then all of a sudden jump from, let's see, how far could you get? You could get to level 5 without, doing anything and OP the game. So if you have the required XP, you have to spend it during the level up phase. Other than that, and the last thing you do is you get to gain a skill card. So at this point, you're at level 2, so you now have level 1 skills you can choose from, or level 2 skills you can choose from. You don't have to choose a level 2 skill. If you liked one of the other level 1 skills, you could choose that one. All right. On further down the road, you're going to see that you have ones that have a Roman numeral 2 next to it. Let's see, yes. So here are 2 level 3s. So let's just say, for example, I have just leveled up to level 3. I can choose one of these 2 cards because I have the first iteration of Arrow Volley and first iteration of Piercing Arrow. Now let's just say, for example, this is what the composition of my skill cards looked like. And I want to level up to level 3, and I want Piercing Arrow 2. All right, I'm coming up against guys that got a lot of defense. Well, I can't do that until I gain Piercing Arrow 1 first. Then I could level it up on another turn to Piercing Arrow 2. So important decisions to make when you are leveling up your characters, because you have to have that base skill first before you can move to the more advanced skill, and you have to meet the level requirement. All right, that is the level up phase. Last but not least is the darkness phase. That's where you come to this little track here, and you're going to move the marker. If there is a symbol above it, you're going to do the appropriate action. I have no idea why. Nobody else in the room, I would have loved to have been in the room when it happened, said, hey, we need to make these different. We need to make these 2 symbols look different because they're way too close. But if you move the marker into spot 3 here, you're going to spawn a roaming monster. Remember that this needs to be colored, but once I do, it's going to be purple. This would be the roaming monster portal. It would spawn there. If you move into here, you would add a rare treasure token to the bag. If you move here, this is regular mobs, not roaming monsters. This symbol looks very much like this mob spawn point here, but remember we removed that when we revealed this room, because this was not a portal. This is just a token. And these mobs, when you do it in the darkness phase, spawn at portal spots. So for this introductory mission, this is the only portal spot we have. Remember how we looked at the second mission, and it had multiple portal spots. So you would spawn multiple mobs when it gets here. And you can see that there's another one here, and then there's another roaming monster one. Here you would put a epic treasure token in the bag. If you get all the way to 9 and you need to push, you're going to flip it over and start here, or push into here, and you can see at this point you would go 1, 2, 3, 4, start back over 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's not a limit to the number of rounds you have to complete your mission in, but it gets significantly harder. You're not putting any additional treasure tokens in the bag, and you're spawning something every other round. But that is the darkness phase. Once you have completed any spawning or adding to the treasure bag that you might have to do during the darkness phase, it is the next round. You start back over with the hero phase. The game continues until everyone has been knocked out. Now, at the start of the game, during setup, you're going to, as a party, gain a certain number of these tokens, which are like revive tokens. So if you get knocked out, you would simply flip over one of these on your next turn, and you would come back with 3 health and all your mana, things like that. And I believe then you get 1 reroll. I'll have to look into that. But if for some reason a hero gets knocked out and all of these tokens have been spent out of your party, then you guys lose the game. Or there might be a mission down the road that says you only have X number of rounds. If you reach your round limit, you might lose the game. Otherwise, once you complete the objectives that are listed in the mission setup guide, you have won. So in this case, the prologue or training mission is pick up this token, essentially, and then come here to this gray token and activate it. Once you do that, you win. There could still be enemies on the board. You don't have to remove a portal or anything like that, because those were the specific objectives for that mission. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Massive Darkness 2, how to play in a nutshell. The biggest things that I want to remind everyone are the difference between portals and mob spawn tokens, and how to create your dice pool and rolling before you roll out your dice, because that's important too. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And if you are enjoying this series, please consider giving these videos a thumbs up. Up next, we're going to start going through each individual class. So these are going to be much shorter videos, but they're going to highlight how to play each class. And we'll do a quick playthrough through this introductory mission here. So it goes quickly. And we're going to start with the Ranger class here. So that's why Lynn is set up. Up next, after that, will be the Barbarian class. If there's a specific class you'd like to see in this series come up next, please let me know in the comments section below. But I'm hoping to cover all the classes. We may just do the base box, the core box, and then do a playthrough. Or maybe I'll get through them all. But we'll see. Eventually, we will do a playthrough of one of the longer missions. With at least one character, obviously with at least one character, possibly 2. We'll see how things go. Other than that, once again, thanks for watching, and have a great day.